Hello guys, once again into another detailed track guide video, and I'll just try to explain. Most likely it's going to be that chicane that you're worried about, but there are a couple of things you need to be working out here. So I just think that taking a wider line in your first initial lap, not like usual. In your initial lap you should take like a wider line. You get to the crane and then you start turning in second gear flat out, which is going to allow you just to carry that little extra speed onto the main straight. And I usually cut this part right about here. Just don't cut it too much because you don't want to get a penalty. And in my track guide I stayed on the left hand side, which I believe it wasn't the best. You need to stay in the middle and then turn in, because you're just going to lose around, I think, 20 thousandths of a second here and there, and use the inside of this curb. Like, inside is very, very important unless you want to get wide. So I will go down in detail of what I do here, and I would really recommend using the 150 meter as a mark. So that could be like your mark. You can see on the right hand side, you've got the 150, and right there. I don't know if you can see, but you got the mark on the right hand side. So this is where you should start braking. If you can do it a little bit later, it's better, but I think that's the latest you can brake. And also I was using a lot of this curb, but the curb can unsettle the car. It can make it very, very unstable once you start rotating it. So I just think like using no curb at all could be a little bit better for like the general population. And yeah, when you get close to the 50, I would recommend turning in, but a little bit before it. So you don't want to turn in quite a lot. So you're basically turning in as little as you can, something like this. And now you can actually see my wheel. So I'm turning in something like this. I'm still braking, but at this point I reduced my braking to about 50-60%. And now I'm going down with the brakes. And now I'm still in third gear. This is important. And now you actually want to get your left wheel into this like little thing right inside of this curve. So this is where you're getting in. So it's not the same. By the way, you can go in second gear, and as you go out of the corner, you should be in third gear. So when you get in here, third, second to rotate the car even better, and now it's going to be third on the way out. So I've seen a lot of mistakes right here with the people that I coached. It's not the same if you go up here and then you end up right about here. So you can see you're not actually pointing the car in the right direction. So you got a little bit of time on the way out of this corner, but you're not going to get a lot of time. You're actually going to lose a bit of this time in this section. You're looking at this like a whole section. And now you want to let go a little bit, and now you see what the line should look like. You should stay in the middle of the track and now aim towards this nice little, once again, nice little inside of this curve. So this again is going to rotate the car even better. And now I'm doing like a little lift off the throttle and then back on the power. But as you can see, the steering should never be like this or like this or like this. So the steering should be all fixed in one position, because you don't want to get too much of the rotation or doing something like this. I mean, of course you can work out with the car as it rotates, but in general, every tiny movement that you do is going to slow you down a little bit. Okay, I think people have a little trouble with this sign. So I usually, I kind of don't have a reference. I kind of have the trees on the right. But as you can see, the trees on the right hand side, as they kind of try to fade away out of your sight, this is where you turn in. And this is where you kind of start cutting the track a little bit. So here we're going to go to the shadow. But once again, it's not the same if you enter the corner like, let's say, it's not the same as you enter the corner like this. It's not the same. So it always should be like as early as you can to straighten up the car, and then you get in, and then you start braking, because the approach is not going to be the same. So entering the corner like this and then turning in, it's not the same as straightening up the car, then braking and then turning in. It's not the same, because the balance of the car is not in the middle anymore. So now you want to have a look at that point. I'm actually pointing out at the shadow. Use a lot of this curb, and you can actually see the crane on the left hand side. This is where I start to turn in. I'm still in like third gear. In my track guide video, I downshifted into second a little bit too quickly, and only here you should be downshifting into second. So I mean, it's never going to be perfect lap. I mean, it could be a perfect lap, but this is just me thinking out loud. So this is the perfect scenario, perfect situation you want to head yourself into. So I'm braking on the curb, using a lot, but don't go too wide. Don't go right here. So as I said, the curb, you can actually see that the curb is, I mean, it's slightly going inwards, like into this corner, and you can see a slight camber going out there. So if you miss it, and if you stay on the brakes for too long, it will just get carried away. So you will just drift wide. So it's very, very important not to use too much braking on the way in. So maybe I think around 50, 40%, something around this area. This should be safe to go, not to slide too much. And then as you enter the corner, you should like a little bit of trail braking, and now on the way out, very, very quick, because you actually want to get onto this curb. So you want to use the maximum of this curb. So it's never going to be the maximum, because I mean, here and there, I mean, you will get it, but just to get a clean lap with it, it's very, very hard. But always, like always, try to point out the curb, point out at that point. But one thing that I would like to mention this area. So when you're going off the curb, it should always be as late as possible. You don't want to get in too early, because now you're going to be pointing out at this point. So you're going to drift a little bit too wide. So as late as you can, just to carry that speed, because there you have a kind of a long stretch after, and I mean, it's really, really important to carry the speed. So here we're getting in a little bit on the brakes, and now you can see a little bit later that I'm going in, and there we go. On the power, rotating the car, third gear, on the way out. Now a very, very tricky section. I would like to explain what I do here. So it's not that I brake and then turn in the car. I'm not doing that stuff. And it's not the same if you, let's say, enter the corner like this and think the car can do it. So it's not the same entering going like this. So you have to point out the car in direction you were actually headed into. So straighten up the car with the line. It has to be in this direction. It's not even same if you do it like this or like this. It's not the same. So it has to be perfectly straight. So as you get in, you can see the mark on the left hand side, which I mentioned in my track guide video, and you need to start applying about 30-40%, maybe sometimes even less. Even 20 can work if you get it perfectly, but 20-30% catching the curb, and now you're in fourth gear, and as you get out, it should be fifth gear. But it's very, very important to kind of carry that speed and not use too much braking, which I just, I said it, I think I said it a million times, but I'm going to mention it once again. So it's not the same using this and doing something like that, or just getting on and lifting up 30-40% of the brakes. It's not the same. You're not carrying the same amount of speed. And on this track, it's very important to catch the inside of the curb or just let the car rotate on its own. And now you're going to drift right about here. And now it's super important to take the advantage of the curves. You can see you got a little dip right about here, and then you got to use it. If you miss it, I think a slight lift can work. It can work, but definitely going to lose like at least a 10 and a half. And then again, you can use it right about there. So it's just a quick change of direction. You really want to quickly change all of the direction you're heading into. I know it can be difficult. There's not a lot of references on this track, so yeah, you gotta be, what I can tell you, you gotta be careful in what you do. That's about it. But here also one more thing, 150, but you can actually use the tree or the second shadow. This is the shadow that I'm usually using, the shadow on the left hand side. And I mentioned that I mentioned in the track guide that you don't want to use a lot of curb initially, and yeah, I actually saw people are not even using the curb at all and getting amazing lap times. So I used a little bit of a curb on the way, actually on the way into the other corner, but now I want to stay on the track, not use any of this curb, and then as you reach the 50, this is where I slightly use it to get a little bit extra rotation. You can, it's very, very difficult to explain what to do at this point, but I would recommend getting to the 50-meter sign and then thinking about braking. But as you brake, you don't want to brake too much because it want to unsettle the car. So you want to do something like this. So you want to have a look at the 50, then as you start turning in, this is 100, and then you reduce it to about 50-40%, and now you can turn into the corner. And now, one thing, so don't try to rush it here. Don't try to get too early on the power. I know it might seem like you're losing time, but if, for example, if you stay on the power like this, it's just going to pull you out. It's going to take you more time to react and more time to get on the power. So you're actually losing time by doing more. So you need to be doing less. So kind of less is more on this track, I think. just taking it easy, and most of the time giving it a bit of time to rotate the car and everything else. So it has to be like this one, and now you just wait. You wait, and then you put it. Then you put the power down. And then you'll have a nice line. The car might slide a bit. You need to counter steer it if you need to. But in general, this is the idea. So this is the idea of just waiting, not producing that understeer, and then turning in and catching the corner. And one more thing, I think this section is very, very important on this track. So I advise to use the 50-meter sign to turn in into the corner. So you want to use a lot of this first curb. As you can see, I'm cutting it quite a lot. And then when you enter the second one, you don't want to cut it the same way. And why is that? Because now you're going to end up right about here. And this is already too late to turn in. So this is already like, okay, wide, you're doing, I think you're in like 5th gear, and then you're missing it. The car cannot turn. So what you need to do to prepare yourself for this one. So as I said before, the 50-meter sign right there is your turning point. This is the point where you actually need to turn in and cut this first curb quite a lot. So I'm thinking about quite a lot. And then as you enter this one, you should not cut it as much, because now you're going to drift a little bit wider than usual, and then you're going to enter the corner in this way. So you want to touch the first part of the curb. That's the way you do it. And now you can turn in as much as you like. But once you were, let's say you missed it, and now you were at this point, you cannot do much. You can just lift and hope you're not going to hit. But now you got full control of the car. I mean, when I say full, I think at least 50-50, but okay. Here we are entering the corner, and now almost, I would say almost immediately getting off it. So you don't want to get to the, you don't want to get right about here and then turn in. So this is not the way to do it. So you actually have to get off the curb somewhere, I would say 60% in, 50, like you see the shadow, and then you should start going off. And now you're off, and now you have almost a straight line. And as close as you can get to the first part of the chicane, the better. Because now it's just going to cause understeer. Whatever you do with the wheel is just going to cause understeer because you're going too quick. And you actually want to get like a nice clean line going from this point. And if you get very, very close to this point, you'll be able to close up this one. I know it's going to be very, very tight and very unusual to do it, but it's a very different feeling just not having the exact same amount of understeer as you, let's say, an approach from this angle. So the car comes from this angle, and then you want to turn it right about here, but you see what happens. You need to turn the wheel, and you're probably going to hit the wall, or you just have to step on the brakes or whatever. So the initial entry is what matters the most. So the initial entry, and then as you enter the corner, this is what actually matters here. And yeah, and again, I think lifting off a little bit is not really a big deal. I think this is, something that most of the time you actually need to do if you want to survive it. Now I would recommend going to the 100-meter sign, or someone, if it's possible, the curb. But I think the initial good reference point should be the 100-meter sign. But brake straight. Don't brake like too early. Don't turn in too early, because now again you're gonna end up not in a good place. So if you go in early, then you have to wait, or you're just gonna end up here. So it's kind of an unusual corner. It's very, very sharp, but at this point, and you can see it's kind of has that little dip right there, which you need to use to rotate the car even better. So I'm gonna go right about at this point. I'm having a look at the 50-meter sign, but somewhere in the 70, I'm starting to turn in. And this is where I reduce my braking from about 100 to about 60-70. So this is once again very important if you don't want to get too much of a slide right there. And then you get in second gear, and as you get in, don't try to rush it. Like I said before, don't try to do this stuff, because the car is going to drift wide. You're just going to go wide. So basically what you have to do is stay off the throttle, and then as you get out, you have to like slam it down. So you wait at this point, wait, and then you start slowly applying the power. And now you're at this point, and now you actually can get on this part. So it's very important not to rush it on this track, and I do believe you will get a kind of a good lap time. And now I will show you my fastest lap time, which I did in my track guide video.